Hey everyone, thanks for joining me back for another episode of Happy, Healthy, and Wealthy Therapists. I have been in this theme of talking about scaling for therapists who are looking to diversify their revenue streams, add alternative streams of income, whatever you want to call it. Let's start with the truth that most therapists won't say out loud. Even other coaches tend to not say this out loud. But a lot of what's marketed as scaling actually feels pretty awful. It feels like more responsibility, more pressure, more visibility, more decisions, more things to manage, and somehow less peace. So if you hear the word scale, whether you already have something that you are scaling or whether you think you know what scaling is supposed to be, and it sounds terrifying, so you hear the word scale and your body tightens, I want you to know that reaction makes perfect sense. Because scaling has been framed as do more, be everywhere, add offers, grow faster. But that's not always the most sustainable thing. And it's especially not sustainable for people who already hold emotional labor for a living. I'm talking about us therapists. So today, I want to talk to you about what you actually need to scale sustainably, not just grow revenue, but build something you can stay inside of. Because what is the point of growing anything if we don't actually want to be in it? And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my story of a coaching program that I started, I scaled, and I ended up not looking forward to. And actually, I scaled it back and I've changed it in its entirety because that's what's really important here is not just doing something because it works, but doing something because it works for you. Because if it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't really work for anyone. It's the same thing as being a therapist, right? Like when we do not create the private practice that really works for us, our clients can't suffer because they don't get the best version of us. And so when it comes to scaling, there are 5 things I've seen over and over that must be in place. And when even one is missing, scaling can start to feel more like self-abandonment instead of expansion. Now, I said this definition a couple of episodes ago, but I want to repeat it so we're all on the same page because I'm going to talk about scaling a lot. So, again, what does scaling mean? Scaling means increasing impact, income, or reach without a proportional increase in your time, energy, or nervous system load. Okay, so now that we're all on the same page about that, let's go into the core issue here, which is scaling without the right foundations. So, again, here's the pattern I see constantly. A therapist is like, okay, I recognize I need to diversify my revenue because I might get sick, my client might get sick, and I want to make money. I want to take more time off without stressing about losing money. So, a therapist wants to scale. Okay, so they add a new offer. They join maybe a program that teaches them how to successfully add and market and sell that new offer. And then they try a new strategy that they've never learned before. But underneath all of that, right, that's a very high level what's actually going on. Underneath all of that, they are exhausted. They are underpriced. They are overextended. They ultimately feel like they are doing it alone. So scaling becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back. And it's why I no longer think of scaling as a strategy, right? There are tons of strategies out there. There are tons of coaches, whether they're a business coach, a business strategist, whatever it is, people who can help you scale, right? It's not about lack of strategy, but scaling becomes more of a capacity based process, right? Because you can have all the strategies in the world. You can know exactly what to do in the right order, in the best order. It can be personalized to you. But if it's not personalized to your capacity, then ultimately it's kind of meaningless. And so the 5 things I'm about to walk you through are the foundations I personally prioritize before growth. And they're the ones that I help my clients, the clients that I coach who are therapists, stabilize inside of first, right? Because we could talk, again, strategy all day long, but if you don't have the capacity to implement the strategy, or if implementing the strategy is going to put you outside of your capacity, then it's not going to be sustainable and it's not going to work. So, number one, I'm saying capacity over and over and over again. So let's start there. Capacity is not motivation. Capacity is not desire. Capacity is not, I really want this. Instead, capacity is our nervous system bandwidth. It is our time availability. It is our cognitive load. It is our emotional margin. And it's our life season reality, right? It is all of those things. And too often I hear therapists just kind of get down on themselves of like, oh, I just wasn't motivated enough. I just couldn't do it. Like, no, us therapists are some of the hardest working, most dedicated people that I know. It's not a matter of like just not having enough accountability or whatever that is. A lot of it is all these other factors. So you can want to scale deeply, you really, really want it, but you could still not have the capacity right now. And one of the biggest mistakes therapists make is trying to scale on top of overly full caseloads, chronic exhaustion, unprocessed resentment towards their business, so many other things. What became really important to me was to personally design my business around my capacity, not the other way around. That was literally my goal for 2025. Again, I launched this big group coaching program in 2023, and it was all based on someone else's blueprint of like, this is the way to scale. There weren't conversations around my capacity. And did I want to lead a team in this way? Did I want to have a group that looks like this? It was just do this and it'll work. And I followed it and it did work. But I had a lot of resentment towards my business and I was chronically exhausted. And I had a full therapy caseload, full for me, even with intensives. And one thing I really prioritize in my business coaching is to provide one-to-one coaching as well. I don't believe everyone gets all of their needs met in a group coaching call because I don't get all of my needs met in group coaching calls. I need that one-on-one support. And so I was trying to make it work with, okay, this is how I was told it was done, and I sure hope it works. But where do my like business ethics and values come into play? So I spent a lot of 2025 reversing things that just I had built up, and it still worked for people, but it didn't work for me. And now my focus is more on, I'm going to design my business around my capacity. And so that means I don't build offers that require constant urgency. I actually protect my recovery time. I don't confuse stretching, right? We probably hear that a lot of like the growth edge or like this is a stretch, but I don't confuse that with overwhelm, right? There is a difference between I'm learning new things, my team is going through more like operational or logistical or staff changes, and not being able to handle what is actually going on right now, because also like autistic burnout can be very, very real for me. So sustainable scaling strategies truly start with an honest assessment of what do I have room for without sacrificing myself. I am currently enrolling for my Happy, Healthy, Wealthy mastermind, and I've been talking with so many therapists on these discovery calls, people who are interested in joining the mastermind. And capacity is a big question that I'm asking them. Like, where do you actually feel like you are? And I have been so proud of the therapists who are like, oh my God, I really want to do this. This seems really cool. It's just not the right time. Because I want it to be the right time for people, because I want people to have a good experience and again, build that self-trust, as opposed to starting a program. They don't have the time, they don't have the capacity, and then they feel like they're just a failure who can't do anything, as opposed to, I don't have room for this, right? I can make room for it, but my life would be horrible for 6 months. That's not what I want people to do. So, truly, capacity is the one thing to start with. Number 2, the right pricing. So, pricing is not just about money, it's about containment. Because when our pricing is too low, everything else has to compensate, right? We need more clients, more volume, more offers, more pressure. And underpricing is one of the fastest ways to burn out while quote unquote scaling. So, pricing is such a complicated thing. We know this when it comes to our therapy session fees, but especially as we start to maybe launch some kind of digital products or courses or coaching programs. I know we all know kind of like the money psychology around, well, I know it should end in a 7 or a 9, but outside of that, it really just kind of is pick what you want it to be. And there's so many strategies around pricing, but the right pricing really allows you to work fewer hours, make clearer decisions, build margin into your business, and say no without panic. Right? If we don't have the right pricing, we're going to have all the same problems we either are having in our therapy business or we had at some point, but then successfully navigated. So we don't want to recreate the problem wheel. We want to remember what is it we're trying to create? Because if what we're doing is diversifying our revenue by adding this alternative stream of income, whatever option you choose, but now that thing is becoming the draining, time-sucking, resentment-filled thing, that's not actually going to help you better in your therapy practice, right? It's just creating new problems. And so I personally prioritize pricing, whether that's for my courses, my membership, my coaching programs, one-on-one or mastermind. I prioritize pricing that supports sustainability, recovery, and choice. Because if your pricing requires you to constantly hustle, no strategy will save you. Number 3, the right offer. I talked about this a couple episodes ago, but not every scalable offer is a sustainable one. Just because something can make money doesn't mean it's right for you. Some offers look good on paper, but they require constant customer support. And are you providing that, or are you paying someone to provide that? Some offers look good on paper, but depend on high emotional availability. I don't know about you, but basically every therapist I've talked with is pretty maxed out on emotional availability. So that's not scalable. Some offers look good on paper, but they add complexity instead of leverage, right? How many new systems do you have to learn? How many team members do you have to hire? How many things are required to essentially get this thing off the ground? So this isn't just about you pick one offer because you heard or you've been told it's the way to go, it's the fastest way to make money, whatever it is. This is about being really, really intentional about the pros and the cons of any quote unquote scalable offer. You have to be able to accept the cons with the pros, right? There are a lot of things that I have tested. There's a lot of things that I still offer. And I really have weighed the pros and cons around, keeping this $29 a month SEO membership that I have with how much work really does go into it, even though it is a low ticket membership. And it's still worth it to me, right? It still builds trust with my community. It still helps therapists increase their online visibility. So it is worth it. And it takes a lot of time. With my courses, right? People have higher expectations from that because it's a higher price point. And there are some things that, are unique and challenging in different ways compared to working with someone in more of like a course only versus a coaching program. So there are always going to be pros and cons to every method. You have to make sure you are good with the cons, right? The pros are always going to be great for all of them, but are the cons going to add unnecessarily heavy like duress, right? Like, is it going to stress you out more than it's actually worth? And so when I think about my offers, the current ones, as well as any new ones I may or may not add in the future, I always ask, does this offer reduce pressure on my life or does it add to it? Right? And if it adds to it, will it be worth it? Will it be some short-term stress because it's a one-time event or offer or something like that? Or is this going to be ongoing stress, right? Because that would not be worth it. So the right offer matches your energy, it fits your values, it aligns with how you actually like to work. Please don't do something that you don't like doing just because you think there's ease and money in it. The right offer ultimately supports your nervous system. And that is what this is all about. Like, yes, we as therapists, when we're talking about diversifying revenue and adding alternative streams of income, a part of it is about the money, but another huge part of it is about how do we actually stay a therapist for as long as we can. And we know that we can't stay a therapist for as long as possible if that's the only thing we ever do, and it starts to become stressful because that is where all of our income is dependent, right? Because that's where we start to, how do I just add more clients? How do I just raise more fees? And there's just more and more stressors related to that. So adding the diverse streams of income is supposed to support our nervous system. Let's make sure when we do that, that we're doing it in a way that supports our nervous system. Because again, scaling sustainably means choosing offers that support your life, not just your income. So number 4, the right strategy. So strategy isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right few things consistently. I'm going to say that again because I even need to hear that message. Strategy isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right few things consistently. So most therapists are not stuck because they lack effort, right? Again, we are hardworking people. We love learning. We're very capable. We're very intelligent. A lot of us are good at thinking on our feet. That's literally what therapy can feel like. So most therapists aren't stuck in, not having the effort or the determination, the drive, the motivation. They're stuck because they're spread too thin, right? Again, the whole problem is I want to diversify my income so that I can not stress so much about when I need to take a mental health day from being a therapist, or again, take a vacation because I want to take vacations, take a sick day because I'm human and I get sick. So when we're spread too thin, and that's the problem, again, we don't want to recreate the problem, but we also want to really just point to what's actually the problem here, right? The problem isn't you're not capable. The problem isn't you can't do it. The problem might be, again, it's just not the season for it. Back to this capacity part. Sustainable strategies look like actually having fewer platforms, right? If you had this situation when it came to choosing your whole tech stack for your therapy practice of what EHR and what telehealth platform and what payment platform and what billing, and if you do insurance, what platform for that, you can only imagine a whole different set of problems comes when it comes to courses and CEs and coaching programs and memberships and stuff like that. But the fewer platforms you have, the easier your strategy will be. Sustainable strategy also looks like having clear positioning. And this isn't just about what offers you do or don't create and market, but this is also about you, right? Because with anything we put out there, people are, yes, buying the product, but they are also purchasing something from you. So when we can also clearly position not just what something is, but why they should learn it from us, spend time with us, whatever it is, it does actually feel more sustainable because some of us might be uncomfortable talking about ourselves, but generally we can be good at it, right? We do know what we are good at. We do know what our strengths are. A sustainable strategy truly looks like systems that work while you rest. Another huge project for me and my team of virtual assistants and my online business manager in 2025 was, oh my gosh, look at all the stuff we are doing manually, whether that's putting this digital form, answers from a digital form into a Google Excel sheet? Or how do we track our testimonials? Or how do we follow up with people? There's so much that we were doing manually that it got in the way of how much we were able to streamline, organize, and grow things. So it was a lot of work to automate a lot of that stuff, but it was so worth it, because now it truly does feel like there's some things we're tweaking here or there. We're always streamlining something, but we are resting more as a team. Things are getting easier. I have to worry less about things. There are even things at this point where I have no idea how some of the behind the scenes of my business works. I have to ask my business manager, remind me, what is the protocol for this? Or remind me, do we have this set in place? Remind me, how does that work? And sometimes it's just because I'm curious. And sometimes it's because one of my coaching clients asked a question and I'm like, I don't know, but let me get back to you with an answer. So I truly get to rest more and more because my team and my systems are in place. And I trust a lot of what we've been spending a couple of years at this point building. And sustainable strategy also looks like depth over constant visibility, right? And I know I say this coming from a place of, if you are listening to this podcast, you are relatively familiar with me, and I am probably all over your social media platforms. And in part, that's because I do it in ways that are sustainable for me. There was a period about 3 months ago at this point where I could not be consistent in the way that I wanted or needed to be in order to sell more courses or book more coaching clients. And so I did end up hiring a social media manager, where now they prep the content and I essentially just have to record what they tell me to record. I get some kind of free will and agency around still continuing to post any reels that I might want to. I still show up in my stories, but it's been more helpful for me to focus on, instead of thinking about how am I always available, to be intentional about how am I available, right? How do I show up? How much attention do I give to showing up? And in part two, a lot of that time, energy, and effort has been leveraged with more paid marketing. So I've been doing a lot of experimenting, playing with, hiring and letting go of ads management teams for Meta, so Facebook and Instagram ads. And that's something that we've been getting better at recently. And so a lot of my stuff is in ads, but that's not requiring anything from me. My team designs the graphics, I approve them. My team starts the captions and all of the information, and I approve that. I sometimes have to film a new reel, but that for me has helped me to worry less about visibility, knowing that I have ads pushing stuff out, compared to really thinking about, what do I have to post today and what should I do? Now I get to actually sit with and think about and be intentional and reflective with what I want to communicate and how I want to do it, instead of just getting something out just to get something out. And so I prioritize strategies that compound over time, that don't require daily output, and that create stability instead of spikes. Because here was the other thing with, I mentioned I launched a coaching program in 2023, and I started rolling back a lot of the stuff that I had put in it by early 2025. And one of those things were, a lot of times when you see these coaches out there who are like, I made a 50K month, I made a 100K month, it's because they're prioritizing something that's called paid in full pricing. And so when I was doing pay in full pricing for my coaching program, it created really exciting months. I was like, oh my gosh, a 40K month, a 50K month. This is what all this stuff is about. And then I would have months that were 10K months. And then I would have months that were 5K months. Because if everyone comes in a wave and they pay in full, and then you don't have something called monthly recurring revenue, like if someone joins a 6-month program and they do 6 monthly payments, hey, you know, for at least the next 6 months, you've got at least this amount of money coming in. Fantastic. If they pay in full, all you know is this month, I'm good. What about next month? What about the next month? What about the one after that? And so I actually needed more stability instead of the spikes, even if it created less sexy numbers in the sense of I can't say I made a 75K month. I can only say I made a 23K month. That's still amazing and fantastic. So I will take the win. So if your strategy requires you to be on all the time, if it requires you doing something that looks good on paper but doesn't actually feel good inside, then it's not sustainable. Last but certainly not least, number 5, the right network. You cannot scale sustainably in isolation. And that's again, not because you're incapable, not because you don't know how to make something work. You might need some assistance setting up a CRM system or learning even what are all the tech platforms out there, whatever it is. But because discernment, regulation, and perspective are relational, right? So the right network gives you reality checks. It gives you nervous system co-regulation. It gives you strategic reflection, gives you accountability without shame. All of those things can't happen when we're by ourselves. If we're doing something by ourselves, we are always questioning ourselves. We are always probably overcome with imposter syndrome and self-doubt, and we decide, yeah, I'm just terrible at this and I'm just going to give up on it, and I'm, a piece of crap who clearly can't make this work. If you say that in a mastermind or in front of your one-to-one coach, they are not going to let you get away with that. They're going to give you a reality check about how hard you're working, how capable you are, how they feel exactly the same, but they're so impressed by you and never would have thought you felt that way. And so it is just so helpful to have a support network of some kind when it comes to your business. And just like we know within the context of our therapy business, it so makes a difference when people get it, right? Because if you're talking with your partner or your friend or a parent, whoever it is, about these business stressors and they don't get it because that's not what they do, there's something about that attunement that we get when someone knows exactly what you're talking about and can provide the right type of support versus kind of general support. Like general support is great, right? It's fantastic. But when someone really, really gets it, it just lands different. And there is a huge difference between getting advice from the internet and being in rooms where people understand your context, your values, and your capacity, right? Any answers ChatGPT gives you, any answers you get from one of those free Facebook groups with tens of thousands of other people in it, it's not going to land the same as people who understand you, where you are, where you're trying to go. So, who you're surrounded by matters. You've probably literally heard your net worth is in your network. And, to be honest, it's true. And it's one of the reasons that I've continued investing in business coaching since early 2023, because the more I get to know people in my coach's world, the more my network expands, the more people know my name, the more people recommend me, and the more successful I become in business. More and more, I have a lot of people who join my programs or reach out to me for coaching because of word of mouth, which is so strange to me because that is not how my therapy practice operates. It operates purely on search engine optimization, and my website is what brings me all my clients, even my therapy intensives. So truly, who you are surrounded by matters and can make a huge difference, especially when you are offering something that is kind of like outside the norm, right? Like everyone knows therapy exists. Everyone, when they are ready for therapy, will look for it. When it comes to a retreat or a coaching program or a course or membership, not everyone is going to know that exists. Not everyone is going to know that there's even a solution to their problems. But the more people who know what you do and know why you are the person to learn from, to spend time with, whatever it is, the more your business is going to expand more easily. So scaling alone is one of the biggest hidden risks, right? When it comes to thinking about scaling, like you can do it, but there's going to be a lot of risks to it. There's going to be a lot more energy, effort, and probably time and money wasted. So I'm going to recap what those 5 things are, because I know I talked a lot and sometimes I go on tangents. So The 5 things I've seen over and over again that must be in place in order for you to scale sustainably. Number 1, capacity. Number 2, the right pricing. Number 3, the right offer. Number 4, the right strategy. And number 5, the right network. So here is the most important thing I'll say today. You don't scale sustainably by fixing one thing. You scale sustainably when capacity, pricing, offers, strategy, and support evolve together. That's how I've built my business. That's how I've come to have $1 million in lifetime gross. I will say gross, like not net, but gross. $1 million in gross lifetime revenue in only 3.5 years because of what I've reflected on, because of where I put myself into different rooms. So that's how I've created my business. And that's why I created my mastermind, the Happy, Healthy, and Wealthy Mastermind, because compared to other programs out there that are helping therapists to grow and scale outside the therapy room, the goal of my mastermind is not to push people faster, right? I don't believe you should have to crank something out in 2 to 3 months, where ultimately, if you're like me, again, you didn't have time to think and reflect of, is this actually what I want to do? Does this actually work for me? All you were doing was like, I got 2 to 3 months to crank this out and I've got to do that. But my mastermind is very intentionally 6 months, and it's very intentionally filled with opportunities for one-to-one support as well. It's not just a group mastermind where I hope you get your question answered, surrounded by 45 other people on the call. You probably won't get your question answered at all. I keep it small, I keep it intentional, and you get that one-on-one support because I don't want people to grow fast. I want them to grow cleaner, calmer, and more intentionally. So inside my Happy, Healthy, and Wealthy Mastermind, we're focusing on protecting your capacity, setting pricing that actually supports your life, refining offers instead of adding more, and simplifying your strategy, all while building in community so you're not doing this alone. If you are craving growth that does not cost you your health, your relationships, or your love for your work, that's exactly what we're doing inside the mastermind. I'll put all the details in the show notes if that's something that resonates with you and you're interested in. Even if this next mastermind fills up, because there are only 8 spots, and at the time of this recording, there's only 4 spots left. If it does fill up, you can put yourself on a wait list to be we can alert you when the next opening shows up for the next round that we're doing. And whether or not you join us, I hope this episode helps you rethink what scaling gets to look like, because sustainable growth is possible and you don't have to sacrifice yourself to build something meaningful. Thanks for joining me today.